All right, has the slide advanced for everyone?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so hopefully everyone has enabled their language choice. And just a reminder to please keep your microphones muted while the session is going. At the end of the two presentations today, we will have a question and answer period. And then you'll be able to either raise your hand via Zoom or in the screen wave, or you can put your questions into the chat in either English or Spanish. I got ahead of myself. So first of all, now that we've got all of our technical notes handled, I wanted to welcome everyone to our first session in our Future Leaders in Conservation series called On the Road to Resilience. The planning team has worked very hard to bring you today's program. The process to get these sessions running has made me optimistic about the enthusiasm of conservation groups to engage with students and people early in their career. This session is only the beginning, and I'm looking forward to what we can build together. As we begin this session, I want to emphasize that land and human stewardship of land is at the heart of conservation, and we are grateful to Indigenous peoples as the original and present stewards of this land and its resources. We acknowledge the colonial history and present of conservation. Meaningful reconciliation requires consultation, building respectful relationships, and obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples before we can proceed with projects. As we start our conservation careers and we look forward to reshaping what conservation means to us, I want us to think about how we can, as future leaders, work towards a more just and towards more equitable conservation. I'm joining you from Canada on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. If you're interested in learning more about the Indigenous peoples where you are currently, you can go to this website here at the bottom of the screen, nativeland.ca, which is a really helpful starting resource. So to talk a little bit about Road to Recovery, which is the organization that is sponsoring today's event. Road to Recovery is focused on recovering the most steeply declining bird species. We integrate biological and social science and advocate co-producing research with conservation practitioners so that our conservation solutions can be implemented successfully. Road to Recovery has a desire to diversify its membership and to engage with the next generation of conservationists, which is what inspired today's session and the Future Leaders in Conservation initiative. If you're interested in learning more about Road to Recovery, you can visit our website, which is at the bottom of the screen here, r2rbirds.org. So the Future Leaders in Conservation series is targeting students and people early in their career with the overall goal of how to identify how conservation organizations can support students and early career professionals. We will have follow-up sessions that build on today's topics. We hope to create a community of peers starting in this session and moving on beyond this. We have also some longer-term goals of integrating students and people early in their career into conservation work. We hope to build a mentorship network and ultimately include some in-person meetings in addition to our virtual engagement sessions. Today's session is called On the Road to Resilience, and it's focused today on addressing ecological grief in the conservation field, in addition to identifying strategies to find hope and cultivate resilient conservation careers. We also hope that this is the beginning of building a community of peers that will continue beyond this session. None of this work would be possible without the amazing work of our planning team. This includes Esmeralda Bravo, who is the current International Fellow for Road to Recovery, myself as the current Graduate Fellow for Road to Recovery, Anna Lello Smith, Fabiola Rodriguez, Emily Singular, Henry Stevens, and Kia Williams. This session is a success truly for their hard work and innovative ideas to make this session possible. So to go over what the plan is for today, we will begin the session with 2 short presentations. After those presentations, we'll have an open question and answer period where you can ask either both or one of the presenters your question. We'll then conclude this main session here with everyone together before some of us move on to our small group discussions. If you are one of the first 100 participants to sign up for this session, we have reached out to you via email, and we've given you a separate meeting link that you can use to join your small group discussion. We'll provide a bit more detail on how that'll all work at the end of this session here. All right, I will turn it over to Anna to introduce today's presenters and the talks that we'll be having today.
Awesome. Thank you, Quinn. And thank you so much to all of you for being here. It's really exciting to see so many people in this room. And we are really grateful and excited to have with us today 4 amazing speakers who are going to help us think about different aspects of the themes of today's webinar, ecological grief, and how we can build resilient conservation careers and community in the face of it. So our first 2 speakers, Madison and Stephanie, will be giving us some context for what ecological grief is, providing a framework and some vocabulary to help name what many of us might be feeling, and to share strategies for coping. And then our second 2 speakers, Karen and Sergio, will then give us a concrete example of how we can find hope by taking action on the ground, drawing from their experiences leading conservation work in Oaxaca. So I'm going to introduce all 4 speakers, but they'll be giving 2 talks in teams of 2. So Madison Cooper holds a master's in health promotion and sociobehavioral sciences from the University of Alberta and a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Laurentian University. Her research focuses on the mental health impacts of climate change on youth, including ecological grief in the post-secondary classroom and the role of peer support spaces in helping youth process climate emotions, build community, and engage in activism. She has facilitated these types of peer support spaces with climate activist organizations in Alberta and Ontario. Madison lives on the traditional lands of the Atikameksheng Anishinaabeg, Lenape First Nation, and the Sagamok Anishinaabeg, which fall within the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850, also known as Sudbury, Ontario. Stephanie Olsen, who will also be doing the first presentation, is a master's student in the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. Stephanie's research explores the mental health impacts of climate change in Alberta and how collective spaces for honoring ecological grief and other difficult climate emotions support well-being and capacity for sustained climate action. Stephanie is also a facilitator with Refugia, an Alberta organization that provides workshops and retreats on ecological grief, eco-anxiety, and the emotional impacts of living during times of planetary crisis. Stephanie is grateful to live, love, work, and play in Amiskwaci-Waskagan Treaty 6 territory, also known as Edmonton, Alberta. Karen Odriozola holds a degree in biology from la Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana Xochimilco Unit in Mexico City, a master's in gender and culture from the University of Chile, and is working on her PhD in social anthropology at CSS Chiapas. She is president of the NGO Chicatana and a member of the Huatl Tlaxiaco Bird Observatory. Her professional work has focused on diverse topics ranging from the environmental to the social, with emphasis on community work, environmental education, ecosystem conservation, and the study of culture with a gender perspective. She considers herself an ecofeminist and decolonial feminist. And finally, Sergio Gómez Villaverde is a biologist and graduate from la Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana, Xochimilco Unit in Mexico City. He has dedicated his work to the study and conservation of birds in South, Central, and North America, participating in various research and conservation projects throughout the region. He's director of the Huatl Tlaxiaco Bird Observatory and a member of the NGO Chicatana, and he's a certified trainer by the North American Banding Council. He currently works on various projects focused on habitat restoration, research, and environmental education for the benefit of migratory birds, as well as environmental education and participatory action research projects with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities in southern Mexico. So thank you all to all four speakers so much for being here with us today. And with that, I will either turn it back to Quinn or let our first two speakers take it away.
All right, I've stopped screen sharing, so hopefully you're able to let me know if you have any problems.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that now. How's it look? Good.
Looks
Okay,
great.
so nods. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Welcome and thank you for being here today. It's lovely to see some familiar names and faces on the call as well. Today, as the lovely introduction we were given mentioned, Steph and I are going to be sharing some of our thoughts on navigating ecological grief and conservation. And so we hope that something that we offer resonates with you. Let me see if I can switch the slide. So as it was mentioned, my name is Madison Cooper. I am currently situated on the traditional lands of the Atikomashing and Anishinaabeg and Wanapitei First Nation, covered under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. I'm an environmental planning assistant here with the City of Greater Sudbury, where my role focuses on community and corporate climate action. And my passion, however, is engaging in conversation with people about our emotional experiences with climate and environmental change. So I'm very grateful to Road to Recovery, Quinn, and the organizing team for giving me the opportunity to participate. And I am looking forward to hearing some of your stories in our small groups later. I'll pass it over to Steph.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I use she, her pronouns. It's really an honor to be here today. Like Madison, I'm so grateful to the folks who organized this event and to Sergio and Karen, and to the people who are translating it into Spanish. And I'm sorry that we can only do our presentation in English, but really grateful for that translation. So I'm actually currently calling in from Victoria, British Columbia, which is the unceded territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. I was born and lived most of my life in Edmonton, Alberta, which is Treaty 6 territory, also known as Misquithia-Waskagan. And I'm really deeply connected to that land and to those ecosystems in Alberta. So I always like to acknowledge them too. And yeah, I'm a master's student in the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta, researching the mental health impacts of the climate crisis. I'm also early in my career. And in addition to my research, I facilitate with refugee retreats and offer community programs on ecological grief and eco-anxiety. So both my research and facilitation work are rooted in my own experiences of ecological grief and searching for ways to cope with and make meaning from those mental health struggles.
So today we're going to talk about how we can define eco-anxiety and ecological grief, how we see ecological grief manifest in conservation work, and some of the ways that we can cope with these challenging feelings and remain meaningfully engaged in our work. So what is eco-anxiety? Eco-anxiety can be seen as an umbrella term for all of the challenging emotions that we experience as a result of environmental change, disruption, and degradation. Some of these emotions are fear, anger, terror, stress, motivation, worry, and hopelessness. Ecological anxiety is an understandable reaction to the magnitude of the environmental problems that surround us. These feelings make sense, and the intensity and severity of these emotions will fluctuate and vary. For some people, the intensity of these emotions does have the potential to disrupt daily functioning, such as sleep, appetite, and socialization, and can potentially contribute to the development of mental health disorders. With proper support, however, eco-anxiety can be an invitation or a resource for recognizing our love for the world and lead to constructive action.
And there's a lot of overlap between ecological grief and eco-anxiety. So ecological grief is an emotional response to ecological loss and destabilization, and to all of its impacts on our lives and communities. So it includes grief for the natural world, for declining bird populations, degraded ecosystems, contaminated waterways, and it also includes personal, social, cultural, and political losses that ripple out from ecological destabilization, like loss of health, loss of future opportunities, loss of land-based knowledge and activities. Ecological grief can arise from total losses, like a wildfire destroying a beloved place, or from gradual chronic loss caused by slow environmental change or degradation. And like eco-anxiety, ecological grief isn't just one emotion. It's not just sadness. It's a complex mix of anger, guilt, anxiety, longing, love, sadness. Yeah, grief is always a complex emotion. So we know that ecological grief is widely experienced, especially amongst environmental workers like conservationists. So it's really exciting to see this group taking this topic seriously. Uh, Ecological grief is also not a mental disorder. It's not being too sensitive. It is an adaptive and wise response that comes from attachment to and caring about a world that's precious and vulnerable, and that is increasingly endangered by the activities of some humans and some human systems. Ecological grief is also considered disenfranchised, which means it isn't validated or supported by the dominant culture. And as a result, people don't have scripts and rituals and community support for moving through ecological loss. So a key challenge in addressing ecological grief is finding ways to enfranchise it by sharing it, honoring it, and recognizing its impact. And I also just want to say that ecological grief is a recent term in Western academic research, but emotional and spiritual connections to land have long been central to Indigenous communities, and colonized communities across the world have been dealing with ecological grief as a result of colonial processes for a very long time.
In 1949, Aldo Leopold wrote in his book, The Sand County Almanac, that one of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. Conservationists and environmental professionals often have direct and continuous exposure to the evidence of global change. And in addition to those living off the land, like Steph mentioned, they are some of those on the front lines of environmental destruction. As Phyllis Wendell referred to it in 1972, ecological work is a science of relationships, and those relationships are being threatened. However, you are not alone in living in a world of wounds. Last year, an international survey of about 2,300 conservation professionals found that more than 1 in 4 reported moderate or severe levels of psychological distress. As Daniela, a conservation scientist in Australia, reflects, I was in no way equipped to deal with the potential extinction of my study species. In many places, no birdsong remained. Sorry. I didn't expect to get emotional. The most difficult time was returning to a nesty site of the glossy black cockatoo, which I knew well. I found nest trees burnt to the ground, their plastic artificial nest hollows built to encourage breeding were a melted mess.
Yeah. So I'm going to walk through a psychological model that explains how people learn to cope with the ecological crisis over time in ways that support their mental health. So the first part of this model, those first 4 bubbles, they basically describe a journey from not really knowing about the ecological crisis to having an awakening. And this could be from learning more about climate change or biodiversity loss, or from directly experiencing its impacts in your life or in your work. For some, this realization happens dramatically, and for others, it's more gradual. Once people grasp the severity of the ecological crisis, however, it often brings up strong emotions like anxiety and depression. And coping with these emotions requires moving between three main coping tasks. So taking action, feeling and processing grief and other emotions, and distancing themselves from the ecological crisis and its emotional weight in healthy ways. So over time, as people get more practice with these three coping tasks, those intense emotions tend to lessen, and they're more able to be present to the reality of the crisis without being consumed by anxiety and depression. So difficult emotions like anxiety and grief don't disappear, and they can reemerge, especially during triggering events like a wildfire or a flood or an extinction. But if people are practicing all three of these coping tasks, it tends to create more room for positive emotions and experiences like love and joy and meaning and purpose that exist alongside those more difficult feelings. If you could go forward, Madison. So I'm just going to zoom in on the main takeaway that I want people to get from this model, which is that coping with the ecological crisis in ways that protect mental health require attending to three sort of areas of your life. So different people are going to need different balances of these three things of action, emotional engagement, and healthy distancing or self-care. You don't have to do them all equally, but neglecting any of them tends to undermine mental health. So let's just take a moment to look at each of these bubbles. When it comes to emotional engagement, this means acknowledging emotions you feel in response to the ecological crisis, like grief or fear or despair, or maybe sometimes there are also things like hope or excitement. And remember that ecological grief is disenfranchised. So emotional engagement is about finding ways to recognize, share, and honor the emotional impact of ecological loss and crisis. So it could look like talking with people in your life, or maybe you're having team check-ins that create some space for emotions, or attending climate cafes, or personal practices like meditation or time in nature or journaling. When it comes to action, what's key is that the actions are meaningful to you and connected to what you care about. Research does show that collective action tends to support mental health more than just individual action. And by virtue of your work in conservation, everyone here is already engaging in action. So I don't expect that this is a task that people are neglecting. Lastly, when it comes to self-care and healthy distancing, we can't constantly dwell in the gravity of the ecological crisis. It's not sustainable. And it's really important to take breaks by doing things that bring you joy, spending time with loved ones, engaging in other hobbies, connecting with nature, having boundaries around how we consume news or what kind of news. There's absolutely no shame in taking a step back when needed. It's actually really critical to staying engaged. And the goal here is to build, as much as possible, healthy distancing practices that actually make you feel nourished and fill your cup instead of just feeling numb or dissociated, which there's definitely space for binging Netflix and zoning out, but ideally also incorporating some of that more intentional self-care. Lots of things will satisfy like more than one task, like this session. For example, for the people who organized it, it's both an action and a type of emotional engagement. But it might be worthwhile to just take a picture of this even and consider how you're currently engaging with these and if there are any areas that you might want to think about bolstering. I also just wanted to say a few quick words about hope. People sometimes get bogged down in whether or not they should feel hopeful. And instead, I'd like to introduce a concept called active hope, which was coined by eco-philosopher and activist Joanna Macy. So traditional hope is about trusting things will work out, but in the face of planetary instability caused by human activities, it's not realistic to just assume that everything will be fine, and that often doesn't resonate for people. The future is uncertain, but uncertainty also holds the possibility for change. So active hope means living in alignment with what you love and the world that you long for, regardless of the outcome of your actions. It's not a feeling, it's a practice, and it's rooted in integrity and in personal values. So this perspective has been really helpful for me because it gives me a way to think about hope, not as a feeling I need in order to act, but as something I can actually generate with my actions.
We just wanted to wrap up by highlighting a few more examples. Some of this overlaps with some of the models that Steph just showed us. However, these are examples how we can self-support and support others in learning to live with and honor our ecological anxiety and grief. And these ideas come from workshops, toolkits, or articles that have been written by people in the conservation fields. And so what I want to highlight here is that in a workplace context, formal and informal peer support approaches can be put into practice. So while these should be co-developed with staff, there's a call for this urgent need to be taken seriously and acted on by those in leadership roles. So those of you that are managers or supervisors in these organizations. And so this can look like informal coffee breaks, but also more formal peer support, like ecological grief workshops, or journaling or activities. And then some other helpful approaches that, and these may be like a combination of things that work for you, could be incorporating moments of mourning or memorial gatherings, breathing and guided imagery exercises, mindfulness, meditation, physical activity, seeking solace in literature or music. And again, just want to highlight that there are many strategies that are worth exploring, and it may just take time to discover what is helpful and meaningful for you as an individual or for your organization or corporation. But yeah, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, we look forward to questions later and to the next one.
Great, thank you so much, Madison and Stephanie. We'll move on to Sergio and Karen's presentation before we take questions. Did you have a question, Sergio? Or you just raised your hand? Okay, perfect.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm gonna start. Well, hi, I'm very excited to be here. We want to thank on behalf of the Chicatana team, all the organizers who made this meeting possible. And I will be presenting the experience of our collective on the road to conservation in Oaxaca, Mexico. And I will do it in Spanish because my English is not very good. So I hope you like. Yeah, I heard the translate. Okay. So, okay. El principal objetivo de esta
The main
presentación
objective
es
of this
compartir nuestras
presentation is to
experiencias,
share our
aprendizajes
experiences
en torno a
and
la
learnings
conservación
regarding
desde una
conservation from
perspectiva
a
decolonial, y estas
decolonial
experiencias
perspective.
son en
And
torno al trabajo
these
colectivo que hemos realizado con
perspectives
las
and
organizaciones
experiences are based on the
indígenas
collective work that we have carried out with the Chicatana
En primer
organization.
lugar, queremos
So first of
presentar un
all,
poco
I
de
would like
nuestro
to
viaje,
present a
camino que
little bit
hemos
about our
emprendido.
journey. This journey
Presentaremos una
we
pequeña
have
línea de
walked
tiempo.
together. We
Después
will
hablaremos sobre
show
las
a short
estrategias que hemos
timeline, then we will
implementado
talk
en el
about
campo.
the strategies
En un
that
tercer
we have
momento, las acciones para la
implemented in the
conservación.
fields.
Y en
Third,
cuarto lugar, y
actions
por
for
último, como
conservations, and
algunas
for
conclusiones o
and
cosas que
last,
nos
some final
gustaría
remarks
remarcar.
or things we would like to highlight.
queríamos compartirles que nuestro
So we
viaje
wanted to
empezó en la
share with
universidad en
you
el
that our
2010.
journey
Ahí
started
tuvimos
in
como un
2010 at
modelo de
university, and here we
enseñanza-aprendizaje
had
en el
a
que
teaching
siempre nos
learning model
enseñaron
in which
a
we were
tratar
always
de
taught
involucrarnos con las problemáticas y
to get
necesidades de las
involved with the
poblaciones
issues
y en
and
ese
needs
sentido
of the
intentar
population, and
resolverlas.
in this sense,
Desde
try to
nuestras
solve them
disciplinas, que en ese
from our
momento fue el
disciplines,
estudio de la
which at
biología.
that time
En el
was the
2012
study in
empezamos cada
biology. Then
uno
in
del equipo
2012,
a
each
especializarnos en
one of the
diferentes
people in the
áreas
team started getting
y así fue
specialized in
que
different
nos
areas, and this
especializamos
is
las cuatro
how
personas que aquí somos
all four people
presentes en las
here
imágenes.
in
Somos
the
biólogas.
images
Yo me
are all
especialicé en antropología y
biologists. I
feminismos, Ana de educación popular
specialized
y
in
popular
anthropology and
campesina,
feminism. Anna
Adrián en
was a
agroecología y
specialist in
Sergio
popular
especialista
education
en
and
pez.
peasant economy, and then
Después de
ecology.
estas
And so
especializaciones
after these
empezamos a realizar un trabajo
specializations, we started
colectivo en el
working
que
on a
intentamos
collective
ver
work where we
cómo nuestras
try to see
herramientas, nuestros
how our
dones, nuestros
tools, our
conocimientos
gifts, our
podían
knowledge
servir para
would be
resolver
useful to
problemáticas o
actually
ayudar en las
solve
comunidades. Y
problems
es así
within
que en el
communities, and so that
2016
we
nos
can help them.
invitaron a
And that's
trabajar
how in
en una
2016 we
comunidad
were
indígena del
invited
estado de
to
Oaxaca.
work in one
Y en
indigenous
esta
community
comunidad,
at the state of
lo que
Oaxaca. And
nos
in this
pidieron
community,
las autoridades
what the
tradicionales
authorities, traditional
o nos
authorities,
externaron es que
require
tenían
from
una
us
necesidad
is that,
por
well, they had
preservar
the
los
need
bienes comunes
for
y
preserving common
también
assets,
preservar y
common goods, and
conservar,
also
cuidar
preserve
el
can
territorio New Sabi.
and
El New
conserve the New
Sabi es la
Sabi
palabra
territory. New Sabi
en
is the
esta lengua
word
indígena
in this
para definir
indigenous language
a
to
su propia
define
cultura.
their very own
Y
culture.
en este
So
lugar también nos dijeron
at
que
this
necesitaban que
place,
las
they also
niñas,
told
niños y los
us
jóvenes
that
pudieran
children
recuperar el
and
Tunsabi,
teenagers
que el
needed to
Tunsabi es la
get the
lengua que
Tunsabi
habla el
back.
pueblo New
Tunsabi
Sabi,
is the language of the New
que se
Sabi
ubica en
people
Oaxaca, en la Mixteca
that
Alta.
is in
Y nos
Oaxaca in
externaron
High Mixteca.
el
And
deseo de
they
que
also
pudieran conocer el
talk
nombre
about
de las
the
aves y qué
wish
aves
of
estaban
them
presentes
learning
ahí
the
en su
names of the
comunidad.
the
Así que
birds that
empezamos
were
a hacer
in their
investigación en
community. So we
sistemas productivos,
started doing
principalmente en
research of
cafetal
productive
bajo sombra,
systems,
y empezamos a
mainly
ocupar la
in
educación
Cafetal Bajo
ambiental
Sombra, and
popular
we
para
started
involucrarnos
using
con la
popular
comunidad.
environmental education to get
Este
involved with the
territorio del que
community.
les estoy
This
hablando
territory
se
that I am
ubica en
talking
México,
about is
específicamente
placed
en
in
el estado de
Mexico,
Oaxaca, esta
specifically
sección
the
morada
state in
como más grande,
Oaxaca. This
y se ubica
part in
aquí en
purple
este
over
puntito
here, and it's
rojo,
located
el
right
lugar
here
que
in
se
the red
llama
dot.
Santa María
And we
Yucuy.
have the Santa
Este
Maria
lugar es
Yucuhiti place. This
un
is the
municipio con
specific
alta
place that we
población
went to.
indígena.
This
Está
is a
sufriendo
municipality with
ahorita
high
pues,
indigenous
procesos de
population,
migración
is undergoing
importantes.
important
Tiene
migration
alto
processes
grado
right
de
now with a
marginación
high
y también de
degree of
pobreza,
marginalization
y
and
es un área
poverty.
con
And this is an area
bosque de montaña
with mountain cloud
y
forest
que tiene una alta
that
biodiversidad y
has
también
a
tienen una
high
alta calidad del
biodiversity
café.
and
Tienen
high coffee,
premios a nivel
high
nacional
quality
por
coffee.
el
They
café
have
que cultivan, que es muy
prices
rico y saboreable
nationwide
con las aves.
for the coffee, which
Y
is really, really
ellos
tasty
asimismo,
and
como le decía, se
eco-friendly
llaman
towards
Nunsabi,
birds.
que significa
They call
la nación
themselves
de las
New
nubes o de
Savin,
la lluvia.
called
Y
the
aquí
nation of
pusimos una foto
clouds
en
or
la que
rain.
ustedes
And
pueden
here
ver
we can
cómo
see a
es esta
picture
nación
where
de
you
las
can
nubes, ¿no?
actually
Ahí
see the
estamos como
action of the
paradas en una
clouds.
montaña un
See,
poco
these
más
are the
alta y se
nations of the
puede ver todo
clouds.
ese
We're in
mar
a
de
higher
nubes.
mountain and you see the full range of clouds over there.
En ese sentido, en el
So in
2016
this sense,
empezaron a
in
hacer trabajos de
2016, we
conservación,
started
que fue
working
cuando
on
nos invitaron a
conservation.
trabajar en la
And this is when
comunidad.
we were invited
Y
to work at the
desde esa
community.
fecha
And
hasta la
from that
actualidad,
date
pues eso nos tiene
till the
trabajando en diferentes
present, we
proyectos,
have been
lo que nos
working in
trae aquí el
different
día de hoy a
projects. What
compartir
brings
esta
us
experiencia
today
con ustedes.
here to share
Para
this
empezar, queríamos
experience with
comentarles
you.
que
To
es para
begin with,
nosotras
we
muy
wanted
importante
to tell
partir
you that it
desde
is very
un
important for us to
posicionamiento
begin from a
que le podemos
posture
denominar como
that we
un lugar
can
de
call
enunciación,
like
un
an
lugar donde nos
enunciation
preguntamos por
place, a
nuestras
place where
políticas
we
de vida
are
y para poder
wondering about
aproximarnos a
our
las
life
comunidades
policies. And
tenemos
to
que
get
generar
closer to the
reflexiones de
communities,
cómo
we
nos
need to
estamos acercando a
reflect
las
on how
comunidades.
we are
En ese
approaching
sentido
the
empezamos
communities.
con
In this sense,
un poco de
we
colonizar el
started
concepto de la
with
naturaleza, en
decolonizing the
primer lugar
concept of
cuestionándonos si
nature. First
realmente
of
está
all,
separado de nosotras o
asking
si
ourselves
somos
if it's
parte
really
de esta
apart from
naturaleza,
us, or
si
if we
somos
are actually
naturaleza
part
en
of
sí
nature, if
misma.
we are
Y
nature in itself, know?
nos preguntamos si la naturaleza
And we
es
were
un bien que se
wondering
puede
if
cosificar, que se
nature
puede
is
explotar,
an asset
y para
that can be
nosotras
a
pues es
thing that can be
no rotundo,
exploded. And
nosotras
for us, this
consideramos
is a
que la
definite no.
naturaleza
We
es un ser
consider
vivo, es
nature is
Gaia,
a living
Pachamama,
being.
como
It's
en
Gaia
diferentes
or
lenguajes
Pachamama,
como se le
as
ha
in
llamado a
different
este ser
languages,
viviente,
this living
y
being has
reconocemos esa
been called, and
interdependencia que
we
tenemos y también
recognize
la
this
existencia
interdependence that we have
entre
and also the
todos los seres
codependence
vivientes y
between all
orgánicos e
living
inorgánicos de
beings,
esta
both organic
vía
and
de la vida.
inorganic, of
Y
this
también nos
wide
preguntamos por
network
el
of
lugar del
life. And we
cuerpo
were
y
also
todo lo que
wondering
nos hace
about the
sentir,
place
¿no?
in the body
Hay un
and
concepto
everything
muy lindo
that
que
it
es
makes us feel.
ese de
There
la
is a
amorosidad que
nice
está
a
aquí,
concept which is
que es
amorosidad. This
cuestionamiento que se
is
hacen
a
aquí
questioning that people
comunidades
raise
indígenas,
here at the
específicamente desde el
indigenous
feminismo
con
comunitario.
communities
Se
from the
preguntan
community
por qué solamente
feminism. They
pueden
are
sentir
wondering
amor
why
por
can
lo
we only
humano
feel
cuando
love
la
for
naturaleza también
humans
nos entrega
while
amor y
nature
nosotros
is
podríamos
also
responderle con
loving
el
us
mismo
and
amor.
we
Y
can
aquí incluso
love
como
it
algún
back,
sinónimo que
And
se me
here
ocurrió, ¿no? Como
I have
esta
a
biofilia
synonym
o
here. This
estas
would be a
afectos, ¿no?
biophilia
Y
or
pues esta pregunta que nos
affections.
hacemos,
And the
¿podemos
question
reconocernos
we are
como
asking
naturaleza?
ourselves, can we
Y desde este
recognize
punto
ourselves as
de
nature?
partida,
And from
pues
this starting
comprendemos que
point,
necesitamos
we
decolonizar la
understand
ciencia hegemónica y
that
todos
we
los
need to
valores que
decolonize
conlleva.
the
Y
hegemonic science and its
nos gusta
values.
mucho los aprendizajes y
And
las
we really
experiencias que han
like
realizado desde la
learnings
etnobiología y la ecología,
coming
los
from
ecofeminismos y el
non-biology,
feminismo decolonial,
ethnobiology,
y por
ecology,
supuesto desde la
ecofeminisms, and
educación
decolonial
ambiental y las
feminisms, and from the popular
ecopedagogías.
environmental education and
Y unas de las
psychopedagogies.
estrategias que hemos
One of
seguido
the
para
strategies
justamente
that we
acercarnos a este
have
campo
had
es
to
empezar por el
go
contexto,
into
es
the
decir,
site is
adecuarnos
starting from the
al
context,
lugar, y
adjusting
tratar de
to the
investigar muy bien,
place
empatizar
and
con la
try
gente,
to do
cuáles son sus
research
necesidades,
on
sus
the people, their
problemáticas u
needs, their
oportunidades que
issues, or
tienen y con
opportunities
las que
that they
podemos
have,
contribuir y
and
colaborar.
how we can
Y al mismo
contribute and
tiempo, que es
collaborate
muy,
in
muy
this sense. At the
importante,
same time, it is very,
conectar con
very
las personas,
important to
establecer
connect to
vínculos
people,
profundos,
to
ojalá de
generate
amistad. Sabemos que
deep
no es posible con
bonds,
todas y todos,
if it's
pero para
possible, of
nosotros esa ha
friendship.
sido
We
como una
know
clave
it's
de
not
éxito
possible
de
with
los proyectos
everyone,
que hemos
but
tenido, que
this
es
has been
una
the key to
conexión
our success, building
desde el
a
corazón. Y esto
connection
es
from
con
the
las
heart.
personas
And
dentro de
this
las
is with the
comunidades y
people
también con
within the
muchas
communities
personas
and also with
alrededor y
many
fuera
people
que se dedican
around and outside of
pues
it,
comunicar o buscar implementar este
who
tipo de
are
proyectos de
looking
conservación.
for implementing
Y
this
también
sort
es
of
importante
conservation
trabajar desde una
process.
ética
And it is
profesional,
also important to work
desde la
from the
perseverancia,
professional
por supuesto, y
ethics
no
point of
dejar
view, from
no dejarnos
perseverance,
claudicar,
not
y
letting
también transformar
ourselves
los
go
modos en los que
down,
comunicamos la
and
ciencia y el conocimiento
transforming and
científico,
adapting
justamente
the way in
adaptándolo
which
esto
we
a los
communicate
contextos en
scientific
los que
knowledge by
estamos
adapting it to the
trabajando,
context that we are
abandonar las
working
prácticas de violencia
in.
epistémica, de
We
extractivismo
talk about
epistémico, es
abandoning
decir,
the
de
practices
llego,
of epistemic
me han dicho todo
violence.
lo que saben y me
Like
voy,
I
escribo
go
lo que
there,
publico, lo
people
publico a mi
tell me
nombre, como
everything they know,
eso
and I publish it under
consideramos que es
my name.
uno
We
de los
believe
errores
actually
más
that is
grandes de
one
la
of the
ciencia.
greatest
Hay que
mistakes of
reconocer los
science. We
aprendizajes
need
y la
to
sabiduría de los
acknowledge
pueblos y
the
darles su
wisdom, the
lugar.
learnings
Y
by the
también es
peoples and
importante
to give them
incorporar
their
las
place. And it
prácticas
is
locales
important to include local
en nuestras
practices as
propias
well
prácticas, no
in
solamente llegar
our
con este
own
conocimiento
practices,
de la
not only
universidad o
getting
de la
there with
ciencia
knowledge
a
from
querer imponer,
university or from
sino hacer
science
uno
and try to
mismo.
impose things,
Y
but put
aquí
them
también es
both
interesante
together.
incluir un
And this is
diálogo
also
intergeneracional, es
important,
decir, no
this
solamente trabajar en la
intergenerational
cuestión de la
dialogue,
conservación con
meaning we
personas
shouldn't
adultas,
just
sino
work
involucrar a
on
niñas,
conservation
niños,
with
jóvenes,
older groups, but
porque
also
ellas
get
y ellos son los
teenagers
futuros
and
dueños de
children
la tierra
involved
y
because
son
they
los
are
que
the
van a tomar
future
las decisiones
owners
con lo que
of
se
the
tiene que
land, and
hacer
they will
ahí en
be
la tierra para
making
poder conservarla.
decisions on what to
Y
do
todo esto
with
que
the
hacemos
land to
lo
conserve
consideramos como
it.
micropolíticas.
And all of
Son
these that we're
pequeños
working on are
espacios de incidencia que
micropolitics,
llegan de nivel
small
individual, familiar,
incidence
comunitario,
spaces and
que
small
sabemos que son
advocacy,
lentos y que van
advocacy
surtiendo
spaces
efecto
at a
por las cosas
family, at a
que ellas
community
y ellos
level.
mismos
They
nos
are slow,
comunican.
but this
En
is
ese
based
sentido,
on the
para
things
nosotras
that the
es importante
community is
poner al
telling ourselves.
centro
In
la
this
vida
sense, it
e
is
ir en contra
important
del
to
terricidio. El
go
terricidio
against
es una palabra
land
que ocupa
murder,
una activista
terricidio.
mapuche que
So
se llama
this is a
Millán, que
word
está aquí
by
abajo su
a
nombre,
Mapuche
para el que
activist,
ella
Mapura
identifica
Millán, with which she
extractivismo
identifies this extractivism, drastic extractivism all around the world that is killing the life. These are death policies, unfortunately. And once we have gone through this path, you know, and knowing where we're standing regarding our very own perspective of ourselves and how we want to approach the community, then that's when we open the doors for the projects that we have to the community.
Listo, ¿me pueden oír?
Okay, can you hear me?
Gracias.
Yes, good, perfect.
Bueno, entonces para esta parte,
So,
todo el equipo de
moving on,
Chicatana, Karen y yo venimos a
the
presentarles
Chicatana
las
team, Karen
acciones
and I, are here to
que
present the
hacemos para la
actions for
conservación. En este
conservation
caso,
that
para
we
esta
carry
presentación
out.
la dividimos
Specifically for
entre
this
la ciencia
presentation,
y la
we
educación popular.
divided it in between
Entonces
science and
aquí
popular
queremos
education. So here
mostrarles
we want to
algunas
show you
fotos, algunas imágenes
some
del
of the
trabajo que
pictures, some
realizamos,
images
que
of the
hacemos
work we carry out.
investigación
We work
a alto
on
nivel,
high-level
hacemos
research.
anillamiento de aves, tenemos una estación de
We
anillamiento
work
desde hace 7
on
años en la
bird
comunidad.
observation. We have had a
Hacemos
base
monitoreo de aves
there
a
at the
través de
community. We monitor
radiotransmisores.
their birds
En
through
la región
radio
tenemos una
transmitters
antena
as
MODIS,
well.
que es una
In
antena
the region, we
que a
have a
nivel
modest antenna.
internacional
That is an antenna that, from the
es una red de
international point of
antenas que
view, it's
internacionalmente
actually
detectan
a
aves que van
network
pasando, que
of
tienen estos
antennas that detects
radiotransmisores.
birds
Hacemos
that
muchos
go through. They
monitoreos
have
y
radio
registro de especies,
transmitters.
pero no
We
solo
work on
migratorias, sino
monitoring
también locales.
for
Nos interesa mucho
migrant and
generar
local
esta información
species.
que
We
casi no se
want to
hace acerca de
generate
las
this
especies
information
residentes, que
regarding
son
local
igual de
species
importantes
as
que las
well because they
migratorias,
are
y
as
también le damos
important
este
as
vuelco a
migrant
lo que siempre
birds.
hace la
So
ciencia de
we
no
try
voltear
to
a ver las aves
work
migratorias, pero
towards
nosotras
a
trabajamos también
different
con esta
look of
parte
science, you know, not only
nuestras aves locales, ¿no?
migratory birds,
Y
but
tenemos no
also
solo estos
local birds,
proyectos,
and
sino
that's what
muchos
we
más,
work
¿no?
with. And
Tenemos
we don't
muchos,
only
muchos
have these
proyectos.
projects, but many more. We have many more projects
Y
as
bueno,
well.
la siguiente, por favor.
Next slide, please.
Y hablando de la
And now,
educación
talking
popular,
about
nosotras
popular environmental education,
nuestras formas de trabajo le
from
damos la misma
our
importancia
points of
a la
view,
ciencia, a los proyectos
we
de ciencia y a los
give
proyectos de
science
educación popular.
projects
Para
and
nosotras
popular
son igual de
education
importantes.
projects the same level of
Sistematizamos toda la información de
significance.
manera
We
adecuada, tanto
systematize
para la
all of the
educación
information
ambiental
appropriately
y
for
para la ciencia.
educational
Entonces,
at environmental
cuando
education
hacemos
and for
ciencia,
science. So
socializamos
when
toda la
we're working on
información para
science, we
transmitirla de una manera
socialize all of
adecuada
the information
a
to
la comunidad,
properly
¿no?
transfer it to the
Entonces,
community.
hablando
And
ya
now,
de la educación
talking
popular,
specifically about
nosotras
popular
actuamos de
education,
diferentes
we
maneras
act
y decidimos
in
nombrarlas
different ways, and we
esta forma,
decided
caminando con la
to
gente,
name
lo que
this,
podemos ver en
them
la
this
primera imagen.
way by
Mientras
walking
estamos
with the
haciendo
people.
ciencia
As
y
we can see in
investigación,
the first
cada
image,
vez
we're
que
working
nos
on science
encontramos
and
con las
research, but
personas en su
whenever
camino al
we meet
trabajo, a
people
algún
in their
lugar,
way
nos
towards
detenemos y le damos
work
la
or
importancia
towards
necesaria que es
cultivating, you
transmitir lo
know,
que
we
estamos
stop
haciendo.
and we tell
Nos
them
tomamos
what
el
we
tiempo
are
que sea
doing. We
necesario, no
take
importa
whatever time needed. It
si
doesn't
comprometemos
matter
nuestros
if
tiempos o
we
nuestro
compromise
trabajo un
our
poquito,
times or a little
pero
bit
es
of our
importante
work
para
as well, but
nosotras
it is
compartir
important for us to
con las
share
personas,
with the
porque ellas
people
son las personas
because
importantes que viven
they
ahí,
are
que
the
son dueñas
important
de la
people. They
tierra,
are
que gracias
living
a
there.
ellos
They
tenemos estos
own the land,
espacios,
and
¿no?
thanks to them, we
Entonces
have these
también
spaces.
hacemos con la gente,
So
que es doing with
we
the
work
people,
with the people and
hacemos
we
muchos
do
talleres
things with the
dejándoles
people. This is the
expresarse y
doing with the
comunicarse.
people.
Esta imagen
We
en
work on
particular fue un
workshops,
taller
letting them
donde a
express
través del
themselves.
arte dejamos
This
que las
through
y
the
los
art,
niños se
we let
expresaran de la manera que ellos
children
quisieran
to
para
express
hablar de la
themselves
importancia de
as
su
they
lenguaje, ¿no?
want to talk about the importance of their
Todas las
language.
actividades que
And
tenemos
so
están
we have
atravesadas
all of
por
the
el arte y la
activities that
creatividad.
have the
Incluso
mainstream of
nuestro hacer
art
en la ciencia
and
viene de esta
creativity.
parte, ¿no?
By doing
Nunca la
this,
dejamos de
we
lado.
do science as well. We
Entonces, creamos
never leave this
estrategias
part
para
aside. So we
comunicar con la
generated
gente de
strategies
maneras
to
adecuadas,
communicate
y eso
appropriately
no
with
implica
people.
simplicidad, solo
And this
implica
doesn't
un
mean
hablar sin
simplicity.
jerarquías, ¿no?
It's
Un
just
hablar de tú a
talking
tú en
without
donde todas nos
hierarchies,
podamos
talking at the
entender.
very same level
Y
so that we can
también
all
bien
understand
importante
each
para
other.
nosotros
And
es
something that is
aprender
very
de las
important for us
personas
as
y de la
well is
naturaleza,
learning from
porque el
the people and
conocimiento ya
nature
está ahí.
because
Entonces,
knowledge is there
nosotras no
already.
nos vemos como
So
alguien que
we do
viene del
not see
exterior a
ourselves
enseñar
as
o a educar.
someone
Nosotros
coming
venimos a
from
compartir
outside
y
to
a
teach
co-crear juntos.
or educate.
Entonces,
We are here to
esta es
share
nuestra
and
visión desde nuestra
co-create
organización.
with the people. This
La
is
que
our
sigue,
vision
por
from
favor.
our organization. Next slide, please.
Entonces, lo que les comentaba
So
acerca
what I was
del
telling
arte
you
que
about
conecta a la
regarding the
naturaleza,
act connecting
hacemos
us to
muchísimas
nature,
actividades y hacemos
we work
actividades
on
para cada
lots of
grupo de edades.
activities
No
and we
hacemos
work on
una
them for
actividad
different
para
age
todas y
groups, not
todos.
one
Vamos
activity for everyone.
haciendo actividades
So
específicas
we
para que
have
cada
specific
grupo de edad de
activities
niñas
so
y
that
niñas se
each
sienta
age group
incluido
of
y participe de
children
la mejor
feels
manera. Este niño en
included and
particular
participate. This
está posando
child
con una carta que
specifically,
iba a
this
mandar para
boy,
mí
is posing with a letter that he will be sending to children in Montana. So he actually made a nice drawing of a migratory bird. And so we wanted to show you these images. Next slide. And also this part of getting in touch to nature through contemplation and creativity is very, very important for us. It's just as important as generating information, letting people understand this easily and create. All of these workshops are from fairs that we have in schools. We generate games having to do with birds to transfer knowledge. We put together spaces within places that are specifically for adults so that children can take part in these activities, you know. This is an example. This was a space only for women producers, for them to offer their products. And then we put together this space so that children can feel as they are part of the activities. And this was total success. At the end of these activities, like they couldn't let us go because all the children were asking to do more. And it was really, really amazing. They were claiming their land back. So that was amazing. Next slide, please. And well, so we wanted to share with you that this is one of the projects that we really, really love. We love our projects, yes, but this one has like a little something else. This is really popular because we put together a guide, a tiny guide of birds with the drawings of the children in the community. And we have this mini guide and we have the names in Tunsavi, Spanish, English, and descriptions, but descriptions by the community. So as you can see in the image, they were even able to draw the birds, the species, and the birds doing bird things, you know. So all the children generated the knowledge. We were just there and we were handing them what they had done. It is important for all of the drawings of this guidebook to have the name of the children that actually drew them. So we are recognizing their effort. Even the birds that we couldn't identify are included in this guide because their work, their participation is valuable. Next slide, please. And here we have some of the drawings. There are some champions, you know. My personal favorite is the one in gray in the upper left of our screen. That's a pigeon, but all of them are amazing. You can see different techniques, different arts, different perceptions of what children see in their environment and territory. Next slide, please. And over here, we also wanted to share with you that indeed our presence and work in the community has an impact in the lives of people. In the images that you can see of an eagle on the left, they included this picture of the eagle in the logotype of the forest police. And this was always in their hats, in their caps and t-shirts. And this was information that we took from the field. On the right, you see an image of the name of the community where we have our Moses antenna, and they have a yellow-breasted chat, which is the species that we're working with here. So anytime, any day, if you go here, they will see this migratory bird that gets to their community. And it is important for us to be able to talk about all of this impact. Sometimes it seems small, but this builds an amazing context. Now there's a person that has a taco place in front of this sign, and he can explain, like, whomever comes to him, the modus antennas operations, you know, and how these birds come in. And also talking about coffee. There are families that before had a conflict, you know. I am going to say conflict, but this might not be the right word representing this, but their production had decreased because of birds, many migratory birds as well. They didn't know of this at this moment, but since we have been sharing information with all of them, their practices for collecting coffee have changed, and now they look for the beans that were actually eaten by the birds, and they have a specialty coffee with the grains collected from migratory birds, and now they place the fruit out there so that the birds can come to their coffee plant so that they can come and so that they can work together. So this is a really nice experience, and this is called the bird coffee. Next slide, please. And well, for this part, this is just going over about everything Karen and I have talked about this presentation. Karen is going to talk about the final remarks, but I just wanted to say that we do not see ourselves from a higher hierarchy level. No, we have left aside all of these academic practices, mainly with this epistemic violence we were talking about. And as Karen was saying, we're always trying to have these friendship bonds, and we're basically a family with the people that we are working with. That's very important for us, and it's important to say that this is a path, a journey that we have just started walking, and we have been working at this for several years, but we're still learning. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Karen to close. I don't know if I switch channels. Can you listen to me well in Spanish? Just one moment, please.
Yeah. Okay. Lo que nos gustaría
Okay, so what we would like to point out is that we are committed with these care policies, and these care policies will allow us continue cultivating, keeping, and nourishing these weavings of life that we are generating for conservation with all of these communities, together with the communities. So we believe connecting to people and connecting to nature is important. We need to know that we're just one more thread, a thin thread in this amazing weaving of life. And it is important to go back and remember that we are interdependent. We are not human beings that can forget about the fact that they exist. They are living because all of the other things exist and live. It is important to remember that these are slow processes. We have our human time like present within ourselves, and then there's a person that can live for 100 years, but the earth's time is different, and we need to accompany the land's processes, not to get in despair because things are not happening the way we want them to happen. We need to be very patient, and this accompaniment that we are working on is about not imposing hierarchies. And for us, it is important to place these bonds, these links with everyone within the community. And we also have this responsibility and environmental ethics present towards the people in the territories that are mostly indigenous peoples, and we acknowledge and respect their wisdom, cosmovisions, and cosmogonies. And so also, as Sergio told you, we co-create this information all together, adapting it to the context, territories, and ages so that we can share this more scientific vision with all of the findings and results that we have found in the projects. And something that is very important is also overcoming obstacles and learning from mistakes. Probably right now we're just presenting to you this pictures where you can see lots of joy and things that like success stories in the projects, but behind this there are mistakes, there are obstacles that we needed to overcome. And the most important thing, preserve and protect nature by listening to earth and the communities. We need to learn how to listen to earth This is difficult from the Western hegemonic perspective, so we need to generate these new skills that bring us together, that allows us to connect to Earth and allow it to tell us what she's saying. So we need to cultivate hope with actions, projects, emotions, and the perspective of the world that is less anthropocentric and more cosmocentric, meaning the cosmos and life needs to be at the center and to leave aside the egocentric view that human beings are the center of the universe. And if possible, here in Spanish, you can see approach the fight, experience, and preservation of territory and nature. Many communities have these in different parts of the world, and they are placing themselves as shields to protect these territories. And hopefully we can accompany them with our bodies as shields by physically being there, or if not physically, see how we can contribute to this fight. Thank you very much. This is an image that we really like because in Spanish it says, the future is a territory to defend. And I believe this is something we can build all together, a future that can actually give us hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those two excellent presentations. It's really set a great foundation for my thinking and my actions going forward. We have about 8 minutes for questions, so please put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. We've got one from Pablo.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to speak in English. I'm from Argentina, from the middle of Argentina, Córdoba. I've got a question for Madison and Stephanie, and also for Karen and Sergio, so I will be quick. First, for Madison and Stephanie, I wanted to ask you if we already know that in our generation is crossed or impact for anxiety in general, meaning our generation from 20s to 30s. I wanted to ask if is there any studies or something that shows that this eco anxiety or eco grief impact like on a bigger way to our generation, to others? I don't know if I explain well myself.
Thanks, Pablo. Sorry, just to make sure I understand the question, what is it, how much do we know people older than us or younger than us are experiencing eco-anxiety and eco-grief? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if we in our generation, like young people, shows like more impact in the eco anxiety, more eco anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually might turn this over to Madison because I think you know a lot about this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, literature right now does show that young people in particular are experiencing increased levels of anxiety and grief. And some of that is because of like the uncertainty that Steph talked about. That, yeah, we're just generally in a period of our lives where, you know, you're growing up and different opportunities are coming up, and it's really hard to plan for a future when you don't know what it's going to look like. And just the fact that young people, and yeah, I guess when I say like, there are also impacts in children, like it's kind of like children and young people generally, so like anyone under the age of 30. But we also like are going through certain levels of development still, even like psychologically and physiologically, where we're learning how to process and deal with these emotions. And so when you're dealing with anything that's like a chronic stressor, like climate change, it easily overwhelms our bodies and our systems, which makes it difficult to process those things. So yeah, we're definitely seeing increased levels. I mean, and again, like as Steph mentioned, there's also research on different like indigenous communities, and so the community and the population that you live in like also impacts that. There's lots of like intersecting factors, but yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great. And we have a question in the chat that says, legislation often impedes conservation. How do you cope or stay hopeful despite that? Yeah, Corinne.
Creo que en muchos lugares del
Well, I
mundo,
believe in many places in the world, legislation and the advancement of extractivism, neoliberalism, capitalism, and patriarchy is always going to look for ways to prevent conservation or to prevent from these projects to be generated or actually our task at this point as a humanity is getting organized so that we can establish new public policies that will somehow change or incide on this neoliberal advancement. But if we can do this, if we can reach this scope of it, we don't like to think that we need to reach to a legislation or public policy level. It is important, as we will telling you, to place your body as a shield. Get to the people, you know, see what they need, how we can help, and not letting this huge hegemonic narrative put us aside because they tell us there is no hope, and this immobilizes us. It prevents us from connecting, from acting. And so we need to do the opposite. Look for strategies, weave networks, and find how to do things. This is the truth. It might sound a little bit contradictory, but this is a fight. Yes, but a fight that community feminists say, together with Lorena Canal, is also make this fight a happy fight, happy resistance, so that the grief, the pain, doesn't consume us. We need to balance this.
Thank you. That's very inspiring. And unfortunately, we are running short on time. So I'm going to move on to some concluding remarks. And this is just the beginning of these conversations. So feel free to email us with additional questions and we can be in touch with the presenters. Sorry, we didn't have more time to get to everyone's questions. I'll just share my screen. All right, so as I've mentioned, this is just the first step in this Future Leaders in Conservation series. So we will be sending out a follow-up survey and as well as links to additional resources that we've discussed. So please look out for this in your email and respond to the survey. It will be very valuable for us moving forward. We will be planning another session in the future based on what we learned today and the responses in that survey. So the date and topic of that next session are still to be determined. If you'd like to be involved and kept aware of Road to Recovery projects and other engagement sessions, you can join our announcement list by emailing us at r2rbirds@gmail.com. Feel free to email us if you'd like to be more involved in our planning team or have ideas or want to just be more involved in this initiative. Finally, we are going to be part of a roundtable discussion at the American Ornithological Society meeting that'll be taking place the first week of October in Colorado. So this is more information on that roundtable. Road to Recovery and other bird groups are going to be engaging with students and people early in their career so that they can participate more in conservation science that's going on. And we want to learn from you. So if you've already registered and are planning to attend, this is on the schedule for the AOS on their website. So if you're going to be attending AOS, you can join us in person. I'd like to thank all of our presenters today, as well as our translator for in this session and the translators that will be working in the small group discussions as well. I'd like to extend another thank you to the planning team And I'd like to thank you for your participation. Lots of people are on the call, which shows us this is a topic that people care about. And we hope that you'll be involved going forward as this initiative grows. And we're looking to collaborate with other organizations as well. So this concludes this main session of our first session on the road to resilience in our Future Leaders in Conservation series. We are going to be moving to our small group discussions now. Hopefully you have received an email and a follow-up email today with your link to this separate meeting. So if you were one of the first 100 participants and you have received that email, someone will be staying in this main room if you have questions about your meeting link or if you were supposed to be contacted for this small group discussion. We won't be returning to this meeting, so this is us saying thank you and goodbye unless we'll be seeing you in those small group discussions. So as I mentioned, someone will stay on this call to answer any logistical questions about your meetings. And any facilitators that are still on the call, please join your discussion now so that we can all start having some discussions. Thank you again, everyone. All right, Belen and I will be joining our second meeting. Let me know if you have any problems, Belen, and hopefully, Sarah, you've got this main room covered.
Yep, you're good. Did you make me a co-host or whatever? So when you close, I'll still be here.
Good point. How do I do that?
You right click on my name and under participants, I think, with the dots or something.
Make co-host.
There you go.
Great. I'll be monitoring the WhatsApp chat and I'll see you at the second meeting, Belen.